Welcome back to episode 2 of Super Janae Talks Hobbies. So, for episode 1, I was testing, figuring out what the podcast is going to be, and I've decided that I'm going to talk about my hobbies in this podcast. 3 specific hobbies that I am currently involved in, but there might be others that lurk around. Number 1 is beekeeping. Number 2, woodworking. And number 3, cycling. Beekeeping is going to be huge this year. They require maintenance, they require work. And I've got my bees coming next month. I've already ordered the parts, the hive components, as we call them, the gear to go on top, smoke tool, and other items. So that's going to be exciting. Can't wait to get that started. So why cycling? Cycling I got into, a long time ago. I've been riding bikes for a very long time, but I wasn't actively riding it as a hobby or as a sport, I guess. And then I got into mountain biking, and just last year I got more into road biking. Did about 75 plus hours of riding for the whole year, which equated to about 1,500 miles. I had set the goal for 1,500 miles and I was happy to reach it. For this year, I had set the goal to 2,000 miles, of which I have ridden none. So I've got a lot of catching up to do. With that and beekeeping, we'll see if I reach my goal. Even if I can get to 1,000 miles, that would be awesome. Woodworking is related to both biking and beekeeping. The hive components are all made of wood. The frames are made of wood. The hive itself, the hive box, is made of wood. And I'm building some other wood furniture, like a bookshelf / computer shelf. Building a wood / metal frame for my bike rollers so I can have some kind of support when I'm riding the bike indoors. So here goes nothing. Beekeeping. We're going to talk about bees first. Well, at least today we'll just focus on bees. How about that, right? So beekeeping is one of the oldest activities humans did to, harvest the honey, because it's a sweet nectar, created, manufactured by the judicious honeybees. So how did I get into it? I think I mentioned last episode how I got into it and what motivated me into going into beekeeping or even thinking about it. Now, traditionally, to harvest honey from the hive, you would have honey supers that go on top where the bees store extra honey that they create. And to extract this honey, you would basically take the frames out, make sure there's no bees on it, take a couple of frames. You usually take 3 frames. You then put them in a extractor. I can't remember the name for this machine, but you put the frames in this extractor and you slowly spin this around, and the spinning function, all it does, it spits out the honey and it collects in the bottom, and you can then store the honey in your jars and good to go. So then you got to clean it out, make sure all the honey is out of the extractor, and then you put the frames back in the hive. Sometimes it gets messy, it's just a lot of work. And sure, I didn't know about how honey was extracted, but when I first learned about the flow frames by Honey Flow, I was totally blown away. This dad this dad and son duo had been doing research for years and years down in Australia, and they came up with these smart manufactured frames that would have cells that would break down and let the honey flow downwards. Now you can check out their website. They're called flowhive.com, or is it honeyflow.com? I gotta double check. I'll put the link in the podcast page. And so it makes it super easy to extract honey. The frames are not fully built, and the honeybees, they go in there and they will say, they look at the frame and they will then close off the areas so then they can store honey. Once the frames are capped, you can look up from the side. All the honey is capped. That's when you go in and extract the honey. Super cool idea, super cool way to extract honey, and you're not messing around with the bees. You don't have to smoke them every time you go. Not that it hurts the honey bees when you're smoking, but it made it really easy. I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. I'm totally gonna do this. I go look at the price. It's about $700 to $600, which gives you one brood box, one hive, one super hive where they store the honey, and then that's your beehive essentially. I'm like, all right, I don't have the room right now. I was living either in Colorado or I was somewhere in Virginia. So when we bought a place next. So last year we we purchased a house and we have plenty of room in the yard. And I started thinking, hey, we could totally do beehives in the yard. So I went back, started researching some more, learning more about what it is, what does it take for you to even buy some bees. I remember a friend of mine back in Colorado, he had borrowed some bees, and he had a 10-acre farm that he needed pollinated, so he rented the bees came, pollinated, and I had lent him my GoPro, and he recorded some footage while he was, getting the bees out of it and letting them go at it. And I was like, that was pretty cool. I totally wanted to get into it. Anyhow, I asked him, how do I get into honeybees? Like, well, I only rented them, or I only borrowed them. I had somebody brought these bees to pollinate my farm, but I don't know anything about them. It's like, all right, no problem. So I started searching, started looking online, and I was like, all right, one video, this really knowledgeable gentleman, he said, if you want to start your own hive, you need to find out from your local beekeeper club. And I was like, oh, I need to find a local beekeeper club. So I looked up Northern Virginia beekeepers, and there was a Northern Virginia Beekeepers Association, and they met every third Monday of the month. I was like, all right, let me go check out this meetup. Go to the meetup. They had a really good talk. A research scientist had come over who'd been working with bees for over 15 years down here at the USDA in Maryland, and he's got his own bee lab where they're checking on bees and basically looking through and see what can be done. So that was awesome. And then I talked to the organizer, the host for the meeting, and I said, I'm a new beekeeper, and I'm local, and I live in Reston. She's like, you know what? There is a beekeeper club down in Reston that you can totally join, and you wouldn't have to come out this far. And then they also mentioned, oh, by the way, our beginner beekeepers class is starting in 2 weeks, and we recommend that you take this class if you want to become a beekeeper. it'll talk to you about everything, what you need to do, blah blah blah. It's like, all right, sounds good. What does the class cost and when is it? I said, well, it's 2 weekends. It's either Saturday, Sunday, or 2 Saturdays. I can't remember, but it was $175 for a weekend, and they would be doing like 8 hours of teaching, or 2 8-hour courses, days. And I was like, okay, that sounds pretty cool. I will look into it. And next week was the local beekeeper class, club meetup, Fairfax Beekeepers. So I found out where they were going to meet, and I had set up my calendar to go there. Turns out the host, or one of the person running that beekeepers club, was the brother of my wife's coworker, and my wife had bought a pound of honey from him, which was really sweet. So that was pretty amazing, that the short connections that we had between us. So I went to the beekeeper meetup in Reston, met with all the people, and it was pretty eye-opening. Then he also mentioned that they're doing a beekeeper class, which is only $100, but it's spread out in 8 weeks essentially. So instead of trying to cram all this information in 2 days, you have a nice long period where you're actually absorbing this information, actually learning about the bees, the different maladies, what you need to do in the first year, what you need to do in the second year, what kind of plants you need, what kind of treatment you need to do for your bees, what kind of equipment you need to buy. So for each week we had homework, and we would go back with the answers. So that was a very, very well set up class, well set up course. Of course, for the $100, I got a beekeeper Bible essentially, which talks about everything that you can think about on bees. And then there was a maladies book and another beekeeper book, and these were all put out by Pennsylvania State University, I believe. I'll have to double check on that information. Anyhow, so that class ended 2 weeks ago. I've ordered my gear, I've ordered my hive components, and I just got a confirmation email from Better Bee. So there's a ton of bee suppliers, hive component and bee suppliers in the area. I went with Better Bee. They're cheaper comparatively to all of the other sites that I looked. There's Man Lake, there's Dadant, there's a lot of bee equipment providers. So now there's still a question stand, hey, where am I going to buy these bees? Well, luckily our instructor, who's been tending to 29 bee hives for about 9 years, was like, hey, I'm going to be selling these bees, and you guys, this class takes priority over other classes that I'm teaching. So put your name down, let me know how many nukes you want. And he's saying, so there's 2 ways you can get bees. One is you get a packaged bees. Number 2 is a nuke. You get a nucleus of a hive. So what is a package? Well, a package is a cage where you have 3 pounds of bees, a queen bee in there in a little hidden container, or in a smaller container, and then you've got feed on top, so the honeybees have some food while they're hanging out in this area. They can't really go around building a hive or whatnot. So when you get a package, you basically open up your hive, dump all the bees in there, make sure you spray them with sugar water so they don't fly around, and you basically set it up. So then they'll have to start getting acclimated to the hive. They have to get acclimated to the queen bee, and make sure that the worker bees are not angry and want to kill this queen bee. So a lot of stress and stuff is going on a package. Packages are great. If you don't have a Langstroth beehive, you would probably get a package. It's better to get a local package though. You don't want to get a package from Georgia because there's some African strain bees down there which you don't want to mess with. All right, what is a nuke? Well, a nuke is a smaller hive. It comes with 5 frames, and it's got a queen bee acclimated, worker bees, hive with brood, with honey. Basically, you're essentially moving a trailer park into a bigger house and letting the bees acclimate with a bigger hive that you essentially set up. So it's only $50 more for a nuke versus a package. Package costs about $125. Nuke costs about $175. So I got 2 nukes for my 2 hives that I will be receiving sometime in April. Pretty exciting stuff. So when the equipment arrives next month, equipment arrives next week, I'm hoping. We'll see. It's coming through UPS ground from upstate New York. Should arrive sometime next week. I'll have to set all the equipment up. I have to assemble all of the boxes, assemble the frames, and they come with the foundation that you need to put in. So there's a lot of components that you got to put together, make sure everything is square. So yeah, a lot of fun stuff happening, coming together. So that's what's happening in the bee area. In the cycling area, last time I rode was a 100-mile or a century in Salisbury, up in Maryland. That was a fun ride. I was a little out of shape, couldn't stick around with the group. The group's average speed ended up being about 24 miles an hour. And it's really important to stay in the group, stay in the pack, so you're getting all the affordances of drag and staying with the pack. Initially when we set out, I was with the pack, but for some reason one of the team members stopped because something was happening with his bike. I was like, hey, we should stop for him or whatever. And since he was partnered up with me, I was like, okay, I'm gonna stop. So I'm looking from far away, he's sitting there fixing something up, and off goes the group. And I'm like, great, this is perfect. This is just not what I wanted to happen. Anyhow, I got back on the bike, started riding, and I just kept riding, trying to catch up, and there's just no way to catch up with a speeding train, no matter how fast you go, because there's only so much energy you have to expend. So that was the last time I went on a bike ride. It was a cold gray, not too cold. It was probably in the 60s, 50s, 60s, but it was an overcast morning. We started at the Salisbury University. We all got together at the starting point, and when the entire team got together, we're like, all right, we're gonna head out. Unfortunately, I had 2 flats before that ride even started. I was so annoyed. I probably rode over some glass. So after I changed my first tube, there was still glass embedded in the rear tire, which I didn't know, of course. So I was like, all right, whatever. I have 2 tubes, so I'm gonna pop in the tube and I'm gonna get going. Got together with a group. As soon as we leave, I'm on the road, or I'm on the path, and right as we leave the starting area, I have a flat tire again in my rear tire. And I'm like, great, this is just what I wanted. Just at the get-go, I had my cameras on, and got the front-facing camera, rear-facing camera, both things are on, and that's how we go. Another reason that got me into beekeeping, one of the most important, One is my oldest son, has a lot of allergies. He's got peanut allergies, legumes, eggs, all sorts of nuts, and it's a lot of problem for my poor baby to eat and enjoy food. And it turns out that local honey is a great way to basically run down these allergies. So one of the reasons was, consuming local allergies boost to the immune system, get better at, having ability to eat other food. Since now I'm not 100% sure how true that is, but I do know that there's tons and tons of cures, and honey is used as a medicinal purpose as well. It's just so pure, absolutely pure food. So that was another reason that got me into beekeeping. So why? So yeah, the bike. So I stopped. I got my rear wheel fixed. There was a repair shop, so the guy spent some time looking at the tire and found the little glass particle that was puncturing the tube every time I put in. And once I got that in, got a new tube in, I basically just started riding and got together with the group. I probably stuck around with the group going at 20 miles an hour or more for the first 30 to 45 minutes maybe, and then I got separated, and then there was 6.5 to 7 hours of riding alone essentially. Um, so they say bike riding, or road biking is team sport. It's a team sport, but it's also an individual sport, because it makes sense when you're riding together and everybody has the same fitness level. Then you can ride together and overcome bigger obstacles. But when you're not at that fitness level, you're just hanging out on your own. You're just riding by yourself, taking in the scenery, which also sucked because it was a gray day. I had both cameras, front facing and rear facing, recording this gray day as I'm riding alone. Kind of depressing, but I do need to go get that footage and put it together. God knows what we're gonna do with it, but there might be some good shots that could be used, and go from there. That's another one of my hobbies: filmmaking and videography. Photography is another one. Filmmaking, actually did 3 short films with 3 different teams actually, back in 2016. 2017 got busy with biking, so recorded a lot of footage on the bike, off the bike. It was all bike related. So 2018 is going to be a little different. I'm going to focus on one thing, get it across the line, talk about it, how I got across it, how I did it, and share it with whoever's interested. I mean, it's just something that I love to do, and what I learned, hopefully it'll help somebody else in learning about it as well. So I'm gonna try to make this a daily thing, and let's see what happens. If you have any questions whatsoever about any of these topics, you're welcome to send a message, and then I will include it into the next episode and answer your question, essentially live, essentially on the podcast. So using Anchor.fm app, you can send me a message, send a message through the message comes in as an audio format, which then I can include into the podcast so people can listen to your voice if you're inclined to do that. If not, you can, send a tweet at SuperJunaid, hashtag podcast, and ask your question, and we'll make sure to get your answer in there. Third part is woodworking. Hey, thank you so much for listening to my podcast. It's something I'm trying out. I've had my Super Junaid blog for over 10 years, and I tried blogging consistently, talking about technology, talking about whatever's happening around. But this year, 2018, I'm going to focus on my hobbies and talk about these hobbies on superjunaid.com. I do have another blog set up for talking about technology, talking about tech, VR, AI, machine learning, you name it, anything that has to do with technology and the advancements, innovations. I'm going to talk about those things on Techno Junkie blog. And then I have another blog, which is basically my company site, Humble Zone Inc. We've been doing user experience design for over 15 years, and I'm going to focus on mobile user experience and using the different tools of the trade on humblezone.com. I'm not sure if it's going to be a blog, if it's going to be a podcast yet, but I'm going to start writing for that blog. If you care to take a look at it, you're welcome to. Otherwise, thank you for listening. Till tomorrow, this is Super Junaid signing out. Live with compassion and have a good night.